Does a bigger sensor mean better image quality? We have been going back and forth on this question since full frame sensors started capturing video. Well, Panasonic have just released their new top of the line GH7 for video shooters, and it comes in at the same price point as their most popular full frame camera, the S5ii. So in this video, we are going to find out which one has better image quality and which one you should buy. Ever since I got my hands on the GH7, I have had the burning question in my mind, which would I buy if I had to choose between the GH7 and the S5ii? And the more I used the GH7, the more I did not know. So in this video, we are finally going to find out some answers. We are going to be testing direct image comparisons, low light, rolling shutter, the list just goes on. And across all the tests, I'll be using the same settings and same lens. There is a big difference between a full frame sensor and a micro four thirds sensor, so don't expect these images to match exactly, as there will be some big differences in perspective as I move the camera back to match them up the best I can. I'm going to be keeping everything internal also in this test, so the GH7 will be in ProRes and the S5ii will be in MOV. But let's not waste any more time talking and let's get into some footage. So let's start off with a sharpness test. Here I filmed my lens test chart, both cameras in max resolution. Punching into 800%, we can see the S5ii is much cleaner. There is so much less noise here, and I would also say it has a sharper image. Coming up to the top of the lines, again, similar thing, is just much sharper on the S5ii. This is quite a big surprise, as when I was using the GH7, I really did not expect this. Here is the S5ii at native ISO, and here is the GH7 also at native ISO. Placing the colour charts side by side on both cameras, the first thing that jumps out to me is on the GH7 there is a more cyan / blue tint. This is probably fixing an issue that I've encountered a lot on the S5ii, and it is there is a green warm tone in the mid-tones. That being said though, I do kind of prefer how the S5ii looks here. It's a bit more vibrant and warm. I think you can correct them to match up pretty well as they're quite close, so we'll call this one a draw. For the slow motion test, I pulled out the good old prop money and the money counter from an old project. Here we've got 120 frames per second on both cameras. This is in 4K on the GH7 and 1080 on the S5ii. This is night and day difference here. It is so much more noisy and mushy on the S5ii, and there is just so much more detail on the GH7. On to rolling shutter test. This is far from scientific, but I use a metronome to try and pan the cameras at the same speed. Here it's pretty close, closer than I thought it was going to be. I knew the GH7 would win, but I thought it would win by a little bit more. But yeah, this is definitely a slight win to the GH7. Next up is low light, and to keep this one fair, because of the sizes in sensor, the full frame sensor will let in more light. I kept the T-stop to a 4 across all the different tests. Here, looking at native ISO, I think they both look really good. Now jumping up to 1600 ISO, the reason I picked this one is this is just about where the image is still usable on the GH7. I think it's performing really good for a micro four thirds sensor, but it's obviously losing pretty bad to the full frame sensor of the S5ii. Here is 12,800 ISO. This is the max ISO without going into the extended range on the GH7. It's pretty unusable here, the colours have fell apart. I did have to turn off the key light to expose both cameras, but this is a big win for the S5ii, just as you'd expect. Remember though, we are exposed at a T4 and I did darken off my studio as much as possible. The GH7 is still really usable in low light. Here I just sat inside my studio with a key light. The difference in perspective here is quite big. These are both on a 24mm cine lens, so the same lens but look like completely different lenses. I would say this is another big win for the S5ii, and really surprised me, as when I was actually using the GH7 I did think it might win in some of these kind of side by side tests, but no, I must admit the S5ii does look a lot better. So this one is just me standing outside in daylight, same lens and same t-stop once again. Your eyes are initially drawn to the blurry background of that full frame sensor, but I think if you did get an equivalent lens for the GH7, say that matches the field of view, these would match really well. This one is hard to decide which I prefer. I think there's a bit more colour information inside the GH7 with it having that internal ProRes, but let me know down in the comments below which one you think wins here. I'm actually surprised at the results after seeing the cameras side by side. When I was using the GH7 in the real world, I did feel like I was getting better images than I did on my S5ii. But I have to admit, the S5ii remains the value king when it comes to terms of price versus image quality. You do have to keep in mind though that the GH7 will have much cheaper lenses and will also have a much better feature set. Me personally, I will be sticking with my S5ii just to see what the future holds. But if I was someone who was in the market for a new camera and I captured a lot of live events, podcasts, live streaming, stuff like that, then I would definitely consider picking up a GH7. With its amazing build quality and being super easy to use, and it pretty much ticks all the boxes in terms of features for what a hybrid camera should have, this is just another amazing tool for us all to use. If you're someone who already owns an S5ii and wants to figure out how to get the most cinematic video possible out of your camera, then go to the top link in the description, which is my personal cine guide for the S5ii, and I'll see you in the next one.